At the end of another 7 days, we do expect to be in a position to carefully ease restrictions in Melbourne, but there will continue to be differences between the settings in Melbourne compared to regional Victoria.
Tonight, breaking news: Melbourne on edge. The city now halfway through its lockdown extension, but authorities have warned that even if it ends next week, tough restrictions are set to continue. It's Sunday the 6th of June. You're watching 6 News also tonight.
I find it deeply offensive that there would be any suggestion that I would have any involvement or support for such a dangerous organisation. I clearly do not.
The ABC dumps a planned Four Corners program on explosive allegations about the Prime Minister's relationship with one of Australia's biggest pushers of QAnon. Could this pose a security threat following the January 6th attack on the US Capitol? And why did the national broadcaster axe the report? And as the mice plague continues to ravage New South Wales, there's concern that the poisons meant to stop them are actually killing other wildlife. Locals reporting fat fish spewing up rodents as the crisis spreads into waterways. Good evening, thanks for joining us this Sunday evening on the 6th of the 6th for 6 News. We are continuing to broadcast and produce from home as per Melbourne's COVID-19 restrictions. We'll hopefully be moving back to the studio very soon, but of course we'll have to wait and see. And that is our top story tonight, with Melburnians around halfway through their 7-day lockdown extension, while regional Victorians enjoy plenty of eased restrictions. But restrictions, they're the main talking point here in Metro Melbourne, with authorities warning that even if the formal lockdown ends next week, as planned, tough restrictions could stay in place for weeks, potentially months to come, especially around mask wearing. Senior reporter Darby Travers has the latest developments.
Victoria has today recorded 2 new locally acquired COVID-19 cases, as well as one overseas on day 3 of Melbourne's 7-day lockdown extension, meaning there are now 85 active cases across the state. The Department of Health says just under 30,000 test results were received overnight, much lower than what we've had in the past few days and during the statewide lockdown. It brings the total amount of tests during the pandemic to around 6.7 million. The New South Wales government says they want the Commonwealth to build and run a dedicated quarantine facility in the state to help bring more Australians home, coming just days after it was confirmed that a new centre would be built in Melbourne, as well as Queensland authorities saying the federal government should play a greater role in the nation's quarantine system. Despite authorities here in Melbourne saying they are hopeful the restrictions will end next week as planned, there's still a lot of concern that it will be extended, and even if it's not, we understand that tough restrictions surrounding things like mask wearing, indoor dining and the return to the office will remain in place for weeks to come, as Acting Premier James Merlino told reporters.
At the end of another 7 days, we do expect to be in a position to carefully ease restrictions in Melbourne, but there will continue to be differences between the settings in Melbourne compared to regional Victoria. So I want to be upfront with people that even if all goes well, we won't be able to have people from Melbourne travelling to regional Victoria during the Queen's Birthday long weekend. The risk of exporting this virus is just too high. With wastewater detections in Bendigo and Axedale and new exposure sites in Anglesea and Northern Victoria, we are in the process of urgently testing or retesting a number of people who may have been exposed.
And today we got our first glimpse of the Victorian Premier Dan Andrews since late April, after he broke multiple ribs earlier this year, with his wife Catherine Andrews tweeting out a photo of her husband, but adding that he won't be back at work until he gets the all clear from his medical team.
Meanwhile, a protest meant to support small businesses has been disrupted in Melbourne CBD with a number of people arrested, but the tactics used by authorities ensured that planned protests at 3 vaccination hubs would not go ahead, with only a handful of people showing up and being met by a large police presence. Rebel News' Avi Yemeni was photographed in Flinders Street despite being warned by police who attended his house the night before not to attend. Yemeni saying that the Victorian government is trying to intimidate journalists and that he won't back down. Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton told reporters earlier that anti-vaxxers, quote, represent a small minority of people, and reiterated that the jab is not mandatory. To other news tonight, Chris Minns says he's humbled to be the new New South Wales Labor leader after Michael Daly dropped out of the race. Minns last week resigned from the shadow cabinet after the ALP's loss in the Upper Hunter by-election. 2 days later, Jodie McKay stepped down as leader. That left Minns to take on Michael Daly, but the latter soon pulled out after a party caucus meeting where it apparently became clear that Minns had majority support. The next New South Wales state election is scheduled for 2023. Former Defence Minister Linda Reynolds has accused the Labor Party of attacking her to the point that she ended up in hospital after describing Brittany Higgins as a lying cow earlier this year. Now, this is despite Ms Reynolds' previous claim that she was in hospital to receive treatment for a pre-existing heart condition. Take a look at this exchange earlier from Senate estimates.
Senator Gallagher, I did answer your questions to the point that you ground me to the ground and ended up in hospital. But I'm back here. I'm answering questions. Answering questions, and I'm assisting. So I'm assisting the AFP with their inquiries. Senator Wong, please don't talk. Senator Wong, please do not. Please do not talk over me, Senator Wong. It's not appropriate to talk over me.
Well, Ms Senator Wong, well, you just alleged that we put you in hospital. You just that I put you in hospital, Senator Reynolds. You should withdraw.
Well, if
so, you're the victim. Not Ms Higgins. Is that what
order,
it is?
Senator Wong? That's not
nobody
what I'm
takes pleasure in asking these questions. Nobody takes pleasure in asking these questions.
Meanwhile, the ABC has dismissed claims that they pulled an upcoming Four Corners episode about Scott Morrison's alleged links to the QAnon conspiracy theory. The national broadcaster says they reached out to the PM's office over 4 weeks ago and have followed up more than 20 times, yet have not received a response. Let's bring in now political reporter Christian Penny. Christian, the Prime Minister actually responded to these claims earlier this week. What did he have to say?
Good evening, Leo. That's right. The ABC's Four Corners had been planning to air a story last Monday night. It was reported that the ABC's managing director had blocked the story from airing. The topic's reportedly around the Prime Minister and his wife Jenny Morrison's alleged friendship with a QAnon proponent. Here's how the Prime Minister responded when questioned here in Canberra on Friday.
I find it deeply offensive that there would be any suggestion that I would have any involvement or support for such a dangerous organisation. I clearly do not. It's also just very disappointing that Four Corners in their inquiries would seek to cast this aspersion not just against me but by members of my own family. I just think that's really poor form. Thank you very much.
Four Corners hit back over the weekend saying, for the record, Four Corners contacted the PM's office 4 weeks ago with detailed questions about our story. We followed up with them more than 20 times seeking answers. They have still not responded. It was suggested that the ABC's managing director, David Anderson, was responsible for pulling the story. In a note to staff, he said, any suggestion that I pulled or blocked the program is simply not true. I reviewed the material and made an editorial decision it was not yet ready for broadcast, as any responsible editor-in-chief would. The ABC went further, tweeting, the ABC has not pulled a story. Any suggestion to the contrary is misleading and mischievous. The decision to publish is only made once all editorial and legal requirements have been met, and it is appropriate to do so. The story, as mentioned, centres around reports first made by Crikey 18 months ago that the Prime Minister's wife, Jenny Morrison, had and has a long-term friendship with Linnell Stewart, whose husband Tim, who at one point reportedly became one of Australia's most prominent QAnon adherents. Further, it's reported that the Morrisons and the Stewarts are long-term friends going back 30 years. Lynelle Stewart is reportedly paid by the taxpayer in a role at Kirribilli House in support of Mrs Morrison. The reason, of course, the questions are being asked is because of the radical and highly sensationalised conspiracy QAnon movement. It's widely reported that they are responsible for the Capitol riots on January 6. With that are legitimate questions about the security of the Prime Minister and what, if any, influences is he being exposed to. Interestingly though, Leo, the New York Times has reported on research that 1 in 7 Americans are QAnon adherents, making it bigger than some religions in the US. So an evolving story. We'll keep you across it.
Certainly a lot of questions that need to be answered. Christian Penny, live for us tonight. Thank you. Frank Zumbo, an advisor to controversial independent MP Craig Kelly, has been charged with a number of historical sexual offences. It's alleged Mr Zumbo sexually touched and indecently assaulted 3 women in their 20s and a teenage girl on multiple occasions between 2014 and 2020. In a statement, Mr Kelly said every citizen was entitled to the presumption of innocence and protection by the rule of law, saying that he spoke with Mr Zumbo and that he advises that he categorically denies all accusations and that he will vigorously defend the matter, adding that, quote, the police have never at any time interviewed me in relation to these matters. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has said that he does not comment on police matters, according to the ABC. As the mice plague continues to ravage New South Wales, there's concern that the poison meant to stop them are actually killing other wildlife. Dozens of birds found dead in one incident in what's been described as devastating. Now look away now if you can't handle this. Locals are reporting fat fish spewing up rodents as the crisis spreads into waterways. This video was shot by an ABC reporter showing a Murray cod with several dead mice, or at least we hope they're dead, in its stomach amid fears about possible poison impacts on native fish. Reporter Dusty Fitzpatrick has the story.
The mice plague spreading across New South Wales has caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage to our farmers over the past couple of months.
I don't sleep because I'm paranoid. You know, you can hear them in your walls and your roof, and so yeah, just your social and emotional well-being is shot, and you're absolutely buggered. I'm actually feeling a bit crook today, and I'm just wearing down from it.
Following good rainfall after several years of drought and the bumper grain crops, the mice have had one of the best environments to thrive in years. There are major concerns not only for the mental welfare of businesses and people alike, who've had many of their crops, feed for livestock and homes destroyed by the mice.
I was on my way home from work and got a phone call that the roof was on fire. The kids were at football with their father, so we had no chance of saving anything. It was the bus driver drove past and noticed the smoke bellowing out of the roof. So by that stage it was too late.
In March of this year, a man from the central west town of Galarganbone contracted a rodent-borne disease. Daryl Jordison contracted a rare form of meningitis which has been linked to the mice plague. Lymphocytic chiromeningitis has been described by New South Wales Health as an extremely rare disease. Following a week in hospital, Mr. Jordison is expected to make a full recovery. A spokesperson for the Western Local Health District has advised people to check their drinking water for mice before consumption. There is some hope for the end of the mice plague, with scientists from the CSIRO, the University of Adelaide and the Centre for Invasive Species Solutions working towards genetically modifying mouse populations, meaning the current breeding rates for mice will be lowered. These advancements could mean the end of another mice plague before it even begins. New South Wales Agricultural Minister Adam Marshall said that $1.8 million of the state government's $50 million mouse plague support package would go towards the studies. In Bathurst, Dusty Fitzpatrick, 6 News.
Overseas now, it's been revealed that former US President Donald Trump will be allowed to return to Facebook and Instagram in 2 years. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says Trump will only get the accounts back in 2023 if the risk to public safety has receded. And this comes as reports grow that the 45th Commander-in-Chief may launch his own platform to compete with big tech companies. US correspondent Jackson Gosnell has the details.
Well, Leo, we're monitoring many stories in the United States, including a ban on Facebook and Instagram for President Trump. We know that former President Trump was banned from the social media platforms after he left office, or shortly before, rather, whenever there was an attack on the Capitol. Now, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, says that former President Trump won't return until 2023 in January. Supporters call that censorship, of course, and he actually says that's the earliest that he could return to the platform, provided that he is no longer a threat to public safety. Now, his aide, Jason Miller, has told CNBC that his blog will not be returning just months after launching, but then he tweeted after that interview saying that it actually was coming back, so we're really unclear as to his blog at this time. An aide also told Newsmax that Trump will soon launch his own social media platform. He's now doing rallies again, giving his full support to a candidate in North Carolina who's running for a Senate seat. He did hold a very packed rally in North Carolina at the GOP conference. Rumors say he will come back in August. That's kind of been called conspiracy a lot online. We'll have to see what happens, though, and we'll be sure to monitor it for you right here from the United States. Reporting in the U.S., I'm Jackson Gosnell. Back to you.
Well, first it was petrol, then it was meat, now it's TV stations affected by hackers. At least 2 stations in the US, Florida's WFTV and Pittsburgh's WPXI, have been completely offline in what cybersecurity experts say appears to be a ransomware attack on their parent company, Cox Media Group. Employees have reportedly been told by managers to shut down company computers and phones and only contact each other using personal devices. So far, both stations were able to put together their local broadcast, but have been limited in what they can do, especially when it comes to social media posts and updating their website. Cox didn't reply to requests for comment from NBC. Back home now, and stunned Melburnians have expressed their shock after seeing a rogue deer through the streets of Fitzroy. Videos and images shared on social media show the animal running through traffic, with the locals reporting to have seen the animal on multiple occasions. Sadly, though, Wildlife Victoria says the deer had been euthanised after it suffered a head injury and severe wear to its hooves. It's still unclear how the deer got there in the first place. Alright, now here's Ivan and Sarah with a look at what's coming up tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Coming up on WAMN News, exclusive report, WA police allegedly deal a broken jaw to a handcuffed man.
An Indigenous homelessness prevention project begs Premier Mark McGowan for support after losing their federal government funding.
Midland Public Hospital cuts reversed after 2 months' worth of media outcry.
A special analysis on animal welfare reform in WA, plus Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. Join us after 6:30 Western Time on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Lots to look forward to. Thanks to both Ivan and Sarah there. Now to Morris forecast right across the country. Brisbane, partly cloudy, a top of 22, 19 in Sydney. Starting the day, just 4 degrees in the nation's capital, getting up to 14 later in the day. 17 in Melbourne, also 17 in Hobart, 19 in rain in Adelaide, 23 in sunny in Alice Springs, 18 in Perth, partly cloudy, and in Darwin, a warm top of 31. And finally tonight, if you've been following us on social media, you've probably seen 2 big announcements about us earlier this week. We've now got 2 new reporters, Christian Penny and Dusty Fitzpatrick. Now, I'll keep it short. Christian Penny will be our political reporter from Sydney. He'll be covering not just state politics, but also federal politics right around the country. If there's an election, if there's a scandal, you hear about it from him, as you saw earlier tonight. Dusty Fitzpatrick is our very first rural reporter, our first ever reporter in regional Australia, and he'll be covering everything from Bathurst, New South Wales, but again, not just in Bathurst and New South Wales, right across the country, as you saw today with the mass plague. That's not just in Bathurst, that is a statewide issue for those people in New South Wales there. So you can expect to see a lot more from Christian and Dusty in the next few weeks and months. And of course, you can't forget the rest of our team, Connor, Darby, Lincoln, Jackson and Holly, all doing a fantastic job to deliver you 24/7 independent and unbiased news coverage. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with all the latest headlines by heading to our website 6news.au.com and by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok and Lit. Just search 6news.au, find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.